Before we begin, it is important to look at the Scandinavian entity known as dwarves. And again, we must look back at the Norse belief to understand what they are. Already, in early Middle Ages, dwarves and elves were ambiguously merged, since they were so similar in Germanic mythology. Hence Snorri calls the dwarf Black Elf, and he says that the dwarves live in the world of the Black Elves. Volspa has left us clues which explains their heritage. It is told that they were formed out of the first Þursakyngir's flesh and blood. Later, Snorri described that the dwarves were quickened like maggots in the flesh of Ymir, like maggots in the soil deep in the earth. It is curious how the mythographic account of the dwarves' origin of Ymir's blood is so similar to the kin of Govig and Loki. It tells us that the actual folk belief understood them as underworldly beings. Dwarves are known to be smaller giants, which may hint that they are in fact a younger race rather than smaller in size. Volspa does also tell us that the dwarves have their halls in rocks. They live in the earth, and throughout the Eddas they are extremely wise, as well as being otherworldly smiths, famous for their supernatural goods crafted in precious metals, which often are heavily influenced by magic. Like the mountain trolls, who are often known to be excellent smiths, active in both mountains and in grave mounds. Volander, the Black Elf, is a perfect example of this. He was the greatest smith in the Edda clays, and after the gods had deceived and betrayed him, he traveled deep into the lands of the giants and turned himself into a mighty and feared troll smith. Since the word dwarf also meant artist and a smith, famous giants were named in the Old Norse dwarf lists. These rock dwellers are rulers over Or and all that the mountains hold within. And early on there was a transition where the dwarf became known as the mountain troll. Barirå, Vette, and Gruvro in Scandinavia rather than dwarf or black elf. Proof of this transformation is seen in the modern folkloric troll, since it has almost identical properties as the Norse dwarf. Already in the Old Norse saga Alvismal, the deeply wise dwarf known as Allwise was turned into stone when the sun shone upon him, a curse which is very common among trolls in the modern folk belief. In conclusion, the origin of the dwarf seems to be arising from giants and beings of death. The mythic form of the Norse dwarf was merged or even evolved over time into the mountain troll and other beings ruling over mountains. And as we have seen so many times before, the spirit of the being lives on under different local veils. Thank you for once again joining us on our journey while we discuss folklore, Svartkonst, Þursakyngi, and more. Remember to like and subscribe